Well, hello, and thanks so much for joining us tonight on Zoom and on Facebook Live. And we're live tweeting too, so please join us there as well. A reminder that we're recording this show for future viewing. Hello, I'm Carol Jenkins. I'm President and CEO of the ERA Coalition and the Fund for Women's Equality. We are 115 women's organizations, social justice organizations across the country working for the Equal Rights Amendment to become the 28th Amendment attached to the Constitution and equality for all. We're so thrilled to mention that the Deltas have joined the ERA Coalition. We welcome them as a member, and we extend an invitation to all organizations to come with us, work with us for equality. Tonight's town hall, the Black Women Vote, comes at a unique time in our history as we experience the first Black woman, the first Indian American woman running for the vice presidency of the United States. We will talk about what Kamala Harris means with our esteemed speakers and panelists today. But first, we'd like to share a message sent by her sister, Maya Harris. Maya is a lawyer, a policy advocate, and writer, and she served as senior advisor, as you may remember, to two historic U.S. presidential candidates, Clinton in 2016 and Harris in 2020. She directed the Global Democracy, Rights, and Justice program of the Ford Foundation and led the largest ACLU affiliate in the nation. Here's her clip.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Maya Harris, a lawyer and a civil rights advocate, and also Kamala's little sister. I wanted to stop by and say thank you. Thank you for getting out the vote. Thank you for leading the fight for the Equal Rights Amendment. And thank you for pushing for the progress that our country so desperately needs. We know that women have to fight twice as hard just to prove our basic dignity every single day, and especially Black women, even as we consistently step up every single day to keep pushing this country forward one step at a time. Well, I want you to know that when Joe and Kamala are in the White House, I know we will have champions we deserve. Champions with a long record of fighting for our health, our safety, our families, our dignity, our rights. Champions who have the experience of winning these fights. Champions who will not stop and who will join us in pushing for the progress that we need. Joe and Kamala have committed to work with advocates like you across the country to pass the ERA so that women's rights are once and for all explicitly enshrined in our Constitution. You know, Joe co-sponsored the ERA 9 times, and he'll support it again as president with my sister by his side. And now that Virginia has become the 38th state to ratify the ERA, he will ask Congress to take action so that our Constitution makes clear that any government-related discrimination against women is unconstitutional. And this is just a part of the bold progressive agenda that Joe and Kamala have and that they will put forward for women. They have a plan to deal with COVID-19 and then get to work to build back better so that our country works not just for a few, but for all of us. And I know it's the women in this virtual room tonight who are going to help us make a Biden-Harris administration a reality and to finally really make some history too. So thank you to the ERA Coalition for bringing this amazing group together. Amy, Glenda, Beverly, Teresa, Brittany, and everyone else. Thank you for what you're doing. We all need to keep on working every single day from now until Election Day to get this done. So please go to iwillvote.com and make your plan to vote. Then ask everyone else in your life to do the same. And I hope you will also get involved with our Women for Biden community by texting SISTER to 30330. That's how we're going to win this thing. And it is so important that we do. So I thank you. Now let's go get to work and bring this thing home for Joe and Kamala. Thank you.
And thanks so much to Maya. Now it is my pleasure to introduce tonight's moderator, Erin Haynes. Erin is a founding member or mother, she describes herself as well, and editor-at-large at The 19th, the new nonprofit newsroom focused on the intersection of women, politics, and policy. Prior to joining and launching The 19th in January of this year, Erin was the Associated Press's national writer on race and ethnicity, primarily covering Race, Politics, and Culture in America. And of course, we watch her every single day on MSNBC. And to bring us up to date on what's happening in the world, thank you so much, Erin, for being with us tonight and for everything you do every single day to keep us informed. Erin.
Well, Carol, thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much for watching. You know, I appreciate you. I appreciate all the Black women that watch and continue to uplift me in trying to report on what has been a very chaotic and consequential campaign cycle. But we are in the home stretch here, 22 days. Again, I'm Erin Haynes, everybody, editor at large for the 19th and your moderator for tonight's conversation. And I'm joined by a host of stellar panelists that I'm going to be introducing in just a second here. But first, I just want to say that I'm really excited to be part of this discussion because it's happening as voting is already underway across the country and millions of voters have already cast their ballots, including people like my mom and the Black women who we know are the vanguard of American democracy. I've spoken with a lot of these women, a lot of these voters over the course of this consequential election cycle, and I can tell you that they are energized, they are focused, and they are absolutely committed to participating safely in this democracy, not just for themselves, but really for their communities and their entire country, even in the midst of the public health and economic crisis that is affecting us all, whether we ever get sick or not, honestly. I've also had the pleasure of being made smarter by quite a few of our panelists over the course of this election. And so it is my pleasure to introduce them to you. You've already heard from Carol Jenkins, President and CEO of the ERA Coalition and Fund for Women's Equality, and our gracious host for today's conversation. She's joined by Amy Allison, President and founder of She the People, Glenda Carr, President and CEO of Higher Heights for America, Brittany Cooper, Associate Professor of Africana Studies at Rutgers University and author of the must-read Eloquent Rage. And must-read is not in the title. That is my personal push plug for that book, which I think everybody should read, especially now. Aminat Sansusi is a senior at Howard University and an intern at the ERA Coalition. Beverly Smith is National President and CEO of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And Teresa Younger is President and CEO of the Ms. Foundation for Women. Welcome to all of you. Welcome to everyone who is tuning in. And I hope that you will share this conversation by using the hashtag Black Women Vote. And so with that, let's get started. I can't believe that we are finally in the home stretch of this election, everybody. And so I want to open up starting with Amy and Glenda and hearing from both of you. I mean, you all are in constant conversation with the Black women who are headed to the polls right now, who are organizing other Black women, Black men, other folks in their networks, whether it's their sorority, their church, their various cultural institutions that are the cornerstones of our community in this moment. Talk a little bit about the state of play headed into the home stretch and what you're hearing from the Black women that you're working to galvanize and get elected in this moment. Amy, I want to start with you. Oh, wait, you're on mute.
Thank you very much. And I'm very honored to be here with you all today. I was thinking about the fact that She the People held some listening sessions about 6 weeks before Kamala Harris was announced to be part of the ticket. We'd been pushing really, really hard to have a woman of color, a Black woman on the ticket with Joe Biden, because what we heard in the listening sessions underscored what we were hearing informally, which was that Black women as those who were really willing to and putting as the most engaged electorate in this country, as the highest vote turnout group of citizens, were really demanding that we see ourselves in leadership and that we see our agenda put forward, and that the history of being ignored and discounted and dehumanized, honestly, by both parties needed to come to an end, and that we needed a new era of economic and racial justice. And we heard that loud and clear. We heard that Black women were willing to do a lot to vote. And I just saw this morning a woman named Viola, who was standing in line in Gwinnett County, first day of early voting. She got in line at 6:20, and 11:30, she was still in line. And when asked why she was willing to do that, she was saying, look, we're ready to vote, and we're going to do anything we can to make sure we're heard. So I think the state of play is, out of everyone in this country, everyone eligible to vote, the most reliable voice of reason, sanity, that will lead the country in the future are Black women. But we are going to have to fight like hell over the next 21 days to make sure that our votes are counted. And I think we as a group are ready for it.
Early voting started today in Georgia, and I can tell you that the lines the people were in line long before the polls even opened this morning, and they were prepared for the long haul. And so that just shows you, I mean, even in-person voting, the excitement around that, as well as we know kind of the record numbers of mail-in ballots that have been requested, not only in Georgia, but across the country. Linda, what would you add to that?
I mean, it's been a journey around explaining to the rest of America that Black women are the building blocks to winning coalition, right, Aaron? We've been writing.
Thank you for helping me do that. Yes, because everybody else seems to be waking up to what most of us have long known.
Yeah, we all know.
Yeah.
And, you know, in 2017, we penned and helped to organize Black women leaders across this country to a letter to the DNC about investing on our political leadership, not only as voters, but as elected leaders and candidates. And you fast forward yourself to 2020, you know, there was a very clear discussion around Vice President Biden choosing a woman of color, and for higher heights, it was very, you know, clearly that we believe that a Black woman would strengthen that ticket. And so a poll that we, you know, we've done a series of research over the last couple of months, and a poll that we put out right before his announcement showed that America, and not just Black women, but the American electorate believed that he should choose a woman of color, and particularly a Black woman, that Black voters, and overwhelmingly Gen X, Gen Z, and millennials, and college-educated women, meaning college-educated white women, college-educated Black women, college-educated women of color, all believed that they wanted him to pick a person that perceives to be the next generation of leaders, that they wanted someone that could unify the country, and that they were indeed excited about making history, not only history to elect the first woman vice president, but frankly, a Black woman. We've recently come out of the field last week on October 30th, what we're calling a temperature check for Black women voters. So how are we feeling about preparing to end voting on November 3rd? And what we found is we are more, as you know, we're more motivated than ever. 75% of Black women, like, we are more motivated than we have in previous years. As you know, that when we fire up a Black woman, she doesn't go to the polls alone. She brings a house, her block, her church, her sorority, and her union. And so we're prepared to do that. But we also asked the question about what keeps you up at night. And what keeps Black women up at night is this election and COVID-19. The anxiety level, particularly for the Gen Xers, you know, Amy and I and the rest of the Gen Xers on this call, we particularly are anxious about this election. Our boomers, though, are more hopeful than Gen Xers and younger because they've actually lived through generational change, right? So they know that we can get past this moment. We, on the other hand, and Aaron and I spent a lot of time texting, like, I don't know if we will make it, right? That there is a sense of anxiety. And what really struck me in this research was two things: that Black women are afraid of, like, their safety. Oftentimes when we talk about the attack on Blackness, you know, coming off of, you know, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd this year, normally we talk about our concern about the Black males in our life. And this poll overwhelmingly actually showed that Black women don't feel safe in their Black skin, that they're afraid that someone's going to come into their house and kill them like Breonna Taylor. So that's definitely a shift in how we think about issues around attack on Blackness and police brutality. The thing that is most helpful for me is that Black women are uniquely in tune to know that we are going to decide this election. 65% of Black women that we surveyed believe that we are the most common group that they selected that will actually help decide this election. And so that shows, again, what we've already known is that Black women have always had the power. It's exciting to know that, you know, an average American normally doesn't think their vote matters, but that Black woman in this election cycle uniquely knows that, as Amy talked about, I'm going to stand in this line because my vote actually matters and it needs and it's needed. And then we're going to drag everybody else with us.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so true. I mean, I don't think anybody understands the concept of one person, one vote better than Black women. And um, yeah, I mean, we talked about that. And I remember a story that I wrote earlier this cycle about Black women wanting, really demanding what they feel that they are owed, power, the power that they should be given, just because of their participation in helping to perfect this democracy, not just in this cycle or the past few cycles, but really over, as long as we have been in this country. That has been what we have pushed to do, and certainly the recognition of that is long overdue. And I
Before you,
want to talk
yeah,
about.
I was going to say, Erin, just to underscore what you and Glenda were just saying, She the People did a national text out the vote, and we focused on Black women, particularly primarily in two battleground states, Texas and Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
We ended up having about 600 volunteers from 38 states, text 270,000 women of color, mostly Black women, that are the margin of victory both for both of those states.
Yeah.
And the conversations that we ended up having for people who were was majority, like these are low to medium propensity voters who typically aren't contacted by campaigns. And in some cases, we were the first group to actually reach out and say, do you have a plan for voting? And the kind of conversations for the 18 to 20-year-olds, these folks who are Black women who are registered, who want a plan to vote, but need a reason to vote, need someone to talk to. This is the group that will carry these battleground states over the line. So I agree on every level. Black women are ready to govern.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. The idea of low propensity voters and Black folks, particularly Black women, who frankly may be in survival mode and are not as plugged in, as those of us who may be paid to be on TV or to write about this or obsess about this, a year and a half out before the election. It's not that those folks don't care about the future of this country. It's not that these folks don't care about their community. They need to be engaged. And not dismissing them, not writing them off. It's groups like yours that are doing that work and are making them, in a lot of cases, frankly, feel seen and heard for the first time in this democracy, and giving them a reason to engage. You started to talk about that a little bit, Amy, and I want to now turn to Brittany, Teresa, and Carol as well, about just what is motivating Black women in this moment as they head to the polls. I mean, yes, we know certainly a lot of people are very excited about Senator Harris's historic candidacy and the potential that holds, but a lot of the issues, frankly, that Senator Harris is raising, even as a senator, particularly around this pandemic. I'm thinking about maternal mortality. I'm thinking about just the inequalities that the pandemic laid bare around housing, around food insecurity, the unemployment benefits, those kinds of things. What is it that we're hearing from Black women about why they are excited or energized or galvanized to participate in this election? Brittany, let me start with you. What about what's happening in the group chat?
Yeah, look, what's happening in the group chat is what's always happening, which is that Black women have a really clear vision about about the way in which our country is often interested in snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, which is to say often interested in becoming the worst version of ourselves, and prone to sort of moving back or being seduced by these ideas about progress that don't actually suit Black folks. And we tend to see that on the right, but there can also become this malaise that sets in on the left, this kind of lethargy that says that nothing ever changes and that things don't get better. And Black women have always refused the ease and the privilege of that kind of position. And so because we are always the first hit when we have these administrations that come in that are conservative and that are devastating to Black communities, who harm schools, who harm worker protections, who harm healthcare access, who harm reproductive access. Black women have this orientation, which I like to call is just like keeping the lights on, right? So part of what everyone is understanding in this election is that we are really on the brink in this country of moving into kind of a swift fascist descent on the one hand, and a kind of swift descent into a white supremacist universe that's from the mid 20th century, which was already horrific, but that's actually from the mid 19th century. And so a world in which, folks don't have access to abortion protections and reproductive justice is a world that is uniquely devastating to Black women, both because we typically need abortion services disproportionate to other women, but also because we need protection against forced sterilization disproportionate to other women as well. We're thinking a lot about criminal justice reform because incarceration has ravaged our communities, and it doesn't just take men out of our communities, but it also takes resources away from the women who then end up having to support those men. We're thinking massively about COVID because over 40,000 Black people have died of COVID since March, and the primary caretakers in our communities are Black women, and they're also represented as essential workers. They're represented as care workers, and then you have this terrible synergy between Black women's own sense of safety and like Breonna Taylor's life. She was an essential worker who was also murdered by the police, and so we have this this sort of protruding kind of state violence, this kind of obtrusive state violence that shows up and disrupts our communities. And frankly, look, I think that at the end of the day, what Black women are voting for is the space to take a breath and a break and exhale and sort of reset and refocus. There was an energy during the Obama years about who we could become as a nation. And then we have been in this Trump stew that makes us feel underwater. And what Black women are saying is, let us come up for air. Like, our people literally need to breathe. They literally need to stop being killed. And I also think too that one of the things that Black women relate to seeing Kamala in the position that she's in is that this is the position that the nation puts Black women in, right? They're like, well, now we've made a mess of things, so we're gonna give it to a Black person to solve it, right? Please come in and save us from ourselves, right? And so she's the progressive energy on the ticket. She's the sort of seen as the future. And I want to say one last thing about that for folks who, because look, I think we should keep it real and say, like, we had some candidates that were quote unquote more left. I want folks to not discount what it means in revolutionary terms that a Black woman is seen as being the energetic future of progressive politics in the country. That's not a position that Black women typically occupy. Folks think of us as the people who do the custodial work of democracy. And I'm not denigrating that work as a daughter of working class folks, right? But, they're fine for us to come out and vote, but they don't see us as the people strategizing. They don't see us as the leadership. They don't see us as having the bold vision to lead us into the future. They don't, they very often the right has cast Black women as people who hold down the progress of democracy because their argument is that we take more away from the democracy than we give to it, right? That we are overrepresented in the need for public services, that we're overrepresented in the carceral state, that we're overrepresented in the social welfare state. And so because of that, Black women are not seen as the future. And then here you have Kamala, and folks are like, wait a minute, if there's any exciting energy, good things going to come from the left this election season, she embodies that. And Black women have never been in that position. And that's incredibly important. And that alone is a reason to vote for this idea that Black women get to be the future of all that is good and progressive in American political life.
Brittany, you make such a good point about just what this candidacy can mean for this country's political imagination, right? Kamala Harris already being the highest elected Black woman in office right now, and now, standing potentially on the precipice of becoming, the highest elected, the number 2 in the country, that being a Black woman, that is not something that has come in the package like hers ever. And the idea of Black women who we know have done the work unofficially in this democracy as being the ones who execute, right, but who are not the visionary. Changing that dynamic for people and showing them what is possible, I think is a lot of what this cycle has also been about. Carol, what would you add to kind of what you're hearing and seeing from talking to the Black women in your network about what Black women are thinking about as they are headed to the polls right now?
Well, I think for the first time in these enormous sizes, we see Black women working collectively together, Beverly Smith and the Deltas and the AKAs and all of those organizations. I was telling her, anytime you can say 5 million Black women say, leave Kamala alone, or we've got your back, I mean, to me, this is a whole new level of group understanding and working together, which is exciting to me. And, I think most Black women, most women, period, have understand, where we are in this country, continuously the most of the impoverished and the disadvantaged and that all of that has to change. And I think we're at that tipping point now where we are amassing our power, and I have every confidence that it will bring us forward, so that our children, I know the things that Erin mentioned, our children won't have to starve. 1 in 3, I think it's actually 1 in 4 children in this country have no idea where their next meal is coming from. The Black maternal health, all of these issues that are absolutely outrageous. They are scandalous, and they have persisted in this country, and they simply have to stop.
Well, President Smith, I want to come to you, since Carol did bring up, the collective efforts that we are seeing Black women doing in this moment. And yes, that is something, as Glenda mentioned, Black women never just act on their own behalf. They act collectively, but it does seem to be something that is happening on a much larger scale. I'm wondering if you can talk about how much having a Black woman on the ticket has to do with that. And how that contributes to kind of this group collective dynamic that we're seeing, especially headed into the home stretch.
Sure. Thanks, Erin, and thanks to Carol and ERA for a coalition to have us all together. This is a point where, and I think the word tipping point that Carol mentioned is critical. And when Brittany mentioned the fact that things are changing, the environment right now is one where we are seen and have to be seen differently. I think Kamala Harris moving forward as you have to that vice presidency spot is totally energizing, because it allows us on a broader scale to see ourselves differently, and it forces, if you will, people to pay attention to that. The fact that she mentioned the D9, and we've had more calls for people wanting to know what D9 is, like it's some secret organization, but that has been an issue. Bring up HBCU, all those code words that you talked about, but it really has brought to light who we are and what our organizations do. I can't tell you the number of calls I got after that for people news agencies want to know what the D9 is, but we are in fact, and what we've done is come together collectively. There are 4 sororities that are Black League letter organizations, but there are 14 organizations who've come together, and we knew this was coming. So we knew the debate was coming, and we strategized ahead of time and said, we got to prepare an open letter for Kamala Harris, because they're going to call her angry Black woman. They're going to call her all those stereotypic names we've heard for so long that all of us are tired of. And, at this point, we probably should be angry Black women, but that's not it. It is the fact that we come together. We know who we are. We know what we are. It's time for others to know what we are. And so when we collectively come together and have 5 million voters, and those 5 million and their circle of influence creates a dynamic that cannot be overlooked in the society. And we've decided as a coalition to come together to make sure that the support is there, not only for Black women, also for women in general in terms of that, but for women of color in particular, in terms of what we are and who we are and what that means. We are in all places. We are at all levels. Brittany mentioned the fact that they see us in a different light and they see us in that stereotypical way. If you look at Kamala and you look at who she is and what she does, and we can make sure that others know Black women are out there in places of position. We need to be at the table because we have the skill set to be at the table and can't make a change. That makes a huge difference for us. So we have been strategizing. I will say, I know for Delta and for the other Greek letter organizations, we've been strategizing since the first 45 win to prepare for what was going to happen next, because I think as Black women are insightful, we knew what we should expect. And so we have worked on campaign strategies. We work to make sure that people get registered early on. We plan to be at the polls. There's a great concern about voter suppression, obviously, and voter protection when that happens. We have come up with strategies in terms of how to focus and manage that. We have made sure we have women running for office at every level, and we have so many organizations, Glenda for one, helping us to make sure and working to make sure that she is preparing as we are people to run for candidacy. We have to have that seat at the table or bring that chair, as Shirley Chisholm said, if there's no other way to do that. Making sure that we are at seats of power and that voice is heard, and that the demeaning behavior that we see, that Black women understand we've all got each other's back on that. You have to make sure that you don't fear that as you go out there and do what you need to do in the communities. We are very excited, obviously, about the opportunity, doing all we can to work with every organization that crossed that gender gap. You know, we talked about Generation X and you know, I'm in the baby boomer category, but the fact that we've all come together with the collective voice mindset and the diversity of thought that we among ourselves have brings us together to make sure that we have a very strong coalition in terms of moving our agenda forward.
Yeah, I want to pick up on that point and come to you, Teresa, because, you know, I mean, obviously Senator Harris's candidacy was far from inevitable, right? Even though a lot of people thought that it made a lot of sense, it's still the fact that it happened. Even she said in the first sit-down interview that she did with me after she became the nominee, that it was a bold choice by the vice president. And we know that issues of race and gender were a part of that deep stakes process that got her to the moment in which we now find ourselves. So I'm wondering if you can just kind of talk about some of the ways in which you saw those racial and gender issues playing out for her, not just during the Veep stakes, but also around her debate performance.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a great honor to be here. And when I listen to my colleagues on this panel speak, I'm often energized by what they have to say. The reality of Kamala Harris and this moment in time is that it hyper accents the complexities of our lives. I think we are oftentimes looking to like pigeonhole Black women and women of color into any one area. And what we get in Kamala Harris is the complexity of who she is, the complexity of her life, the complexity of the decisions that she had to make in order to move into the leadership role she's in, right? So you can't just say she's a Black woman because she's also a member of the Indian community, right? And that's a complexity that many women of color are sitting with. Very few of us just get to claim one quote unquote racial identity that everybody gets to say that's what it is, right? And also the complexity of what it is to hold space in the world as a Black woman. And I think what we saw in Kamala Harris, both during the debate and before the decision to select her, was really this recognition that she had positioned herself to own who she was and to be able to accept who she was, and wasn't willing to change what that looked like for any of us. And that kind of power, I think, was so amazing. During the debate, for me, the thing that I kept thinking was, she's that really cool auntie who tells you the truth when she speaks, and you go to her because you need to make sure that you have not lost your mind. And when I watched her, that's exactly what I was seeing. Somebody who was speaking a truth, not just to me, but to all of the women around us. And her selection didn't just affect me. In fact, her selection affected me more and my friends more of multiple backgrounds than having Hillary Clinton run for president. It was more because she totally looked like us. We had followed her. In most cases, the political geeks, like those of us on this town hall tonight, we've been following her for a long time. And her sister and her niece and her family were our sisters, our nieces, and our families. And we understood what sacrifices that we would continue to make to lift up that leadership. And so when they introduced Kamala as a stepmother, an aunt, a cousin, a sister. It also reinforced the complexity by which Black women have had to lead our lives. We don't get to drop at the doorstep our identities in any way, shape, or form. And in fact, we carry all of that with us into this moment in time and into the spaces we go into. We don't get to just ignore what that looks like. And so for me, and for many women that I know and have talked to, this moment is about being able to hold our full selves as Black women, as women of color, in all of our identities in this moment, and be able to speak our truths. And in all honesty, what I continue to see and hear, not just the boldness that Senator Harris brings to the table, but also the honesty that she brings to the table. And what she's bringing is something that I think so many of us are feeling, or at least I know I am, is I have nothing left to lose.
Well, you know,
nothing left to lose.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you say that, Teresa. And Amy, that's actually reminded me of some conversations that you and I had. I mean, I remember, you know, She the People had that amazing, presidential primary conversation with so many of the candidates, Senator Harris being among them, and just the difference, but in her as a candidate between that moment and the moment that we now find ourselves, how she brought all those identities to the convention stage, right? When she accepted the nomination, how she brought those identities when she was on the debate stage, I think, in a lot of ways. And I mean, I actually want to come to you, because among those identities, obviously, is her, being an alum of Howard University. And we've brought up the topic of HBCUs already, but I just wonder about her candidacy as something that is exciting for young Black women, especially young Black women at HBCUs. What are you talking about with your classmates in terms of, what she represents and how that part of her identity is something that's resonating with those voters, and how it may be motivating or galvanizing them in this moment?
Yeah, we're definitely proud to say that we have our Howard University alum as the VP nominee. We've noticed that it's also, a lot of us have been engaging in political discussions and encouraging young people to go out and vote. And many people have been also helping people register to vote. What I've noticed, particularly as a young Black woman, is that we are excited to vote because for the first time, we are casting a vote in the presidential election, and also history's being made. But we also have concerns and issues about what the future holds for young Black women in America, issues that specifically pertain to equity in education, student debt and loans, racial injustices, police reform, and equal access to quality healthcare. So there's those topics that we are looking to Kamala Harris to address, and also Joe Biden as well. And it's just an exciting time. Great conversations are happening. I know we're not on campus this semester, but through our group chats and social media, everyone's excited and encouraging people to go out and vote.
Well, that is certainly good to hear. So thank you for giving us kind of the view from the group chat and the Facebook groups. I want to ask, I don't want to let today pass. This was the kind of opening day of the confirmation hearings for Amy Coney Barrett. And, Black women, we know all issues are Black women's issues. And Black women are issues voters. We are not monolithic. We are, we can be rural voters and educated voters and frankly, voters that are interested in the future of the Supreme Court. And so I just want to talk to those of you who are hearing from Black women about the consequences of the court. And obviously Senator Harris is on the Senate Judiciary Committee, was one of the people questioning, that's going to be questioning Amy Coney Barrett, that discussed kind of the implications of her confirmation, framing that in terms of the Affordable Care Act and some other things. How Black women are kind of viewing this choice, looking at this process and thinking about what's at stake. I will, Glenda, what are you hearing from Black women about the Supreme Court, and are they looking forward to seeing Senator Harris in her role as a member of the judiciary here, I guess, in the next week or so?
Erin, I think it ties to Black women being concerned about this election cycle and the fact that we are living in a politically polarizing and racially divisive time, that our highest court should not be a political football. And so the fact that the Senate is moving forward on the hearings in two backdrops, moving forward with the hearings so close to the election, I think is concerning to Americans and particularly Black women. And we're just coming off a weeks-long cycle about a super spreader event that happened in DC. And so the notion that these hearings are actually happening in person is, I think, at the end of the day, there's some political discussions about should it be in person, some people having masks on. But at the end of the day, the most important issue right now that our country should be talking with, and our leaders that we've elected to send to Congress, that we've elected to send to state houses, elected to send to city halls, should certainly be centered on COVID-19 and us surviving and thriving past that. And that this is not the highest use of our political capital and highest use of what our elected leaders ought to be doing, frankly, across the aisle. And so we are, at a point where we're moving forward a Senate confirmation hearing, and we have a conversation in the economic stimulus package, including extending unemployment benefits. That is what Americans, and particularly Black women, are most concerned with. If you look at it from a political perspective, as you know, Senator Harris, she is in her wheelhouse as it relates to her as a leader in the Judicial Committee in her role as a U.S. Senator and being the only Black woman sitting at that seat. And so I think certainly everybody is going to watch and see her. I know I stopped and was like, oh, hold on, I had a call. Excuse me, I have to call y'all back. Opening. But like I said, for me as a Black woman living in America, concerned about my family, friends, both health and their ability to pay their bills, and not continue to slip further back in the economic disparities of Black women in this country, that is what our Congress ought to be taking up in this moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I know there's been, this narrative that Democrats are not as concerned with the Supreme Court. I think that Black women are absolutely interested in the Supreme Court. And I know, among the things that Black women were also excited about, I know it kind of got lost in the conversation when Joe Biden said he was going to pick a woman and, as his running mate, but then also as the conversation kind of gravitated towards that being a woman of color and probably a Black woman. I think some people missed, when he was in South Carolina on the debate stage and said, by the way, I'm going to put a Black woman on the Supreme Court too. Yeah. That excited a lot of Black women. Carol, I want to come back to you because, I'm wondering if that is the potential, we're both organizations that focus a lot on equality, equity, that notion, right? I mean, there's never been a Black woman on the high court, and that is something that could happen if you have a Biden-Harris administration. Talk to me about that as something that could also be motivating Black women in this moment, and the possibility that this is a ticket that could finally make that a reality in this country. Well,
there are so many possibilities, and what we are looking at is the lack of possibilities in the administration that we've all lived in for the last few years, and the absolute bleakness that many people perceive. I mean, we have everything to lose in the Supreme Court. I agree that we can't let it stop us and that there will have to be ways of getting around it. But if you look at the imbalance, if you look at the reason that she's been chosen, she's coming for a specific duty, a job. She has an assignment to do, on the Supreme Court. So I think that the prospect of a glimmer of hope beyond the current whatever happens. I'm not great at numbers, but I get them somewhat. So I think that in the numbers, they probably have what they want to accomplish. And so we have to look beyond that and to make sure that in the electoral process, we take the presidency, take the House, take the Senate, and make sure that we can make up for whatever may exist in the Supreme Court as it is configured at the, at the moment. But so I think Black women on the Supreme Court will be absolutely fantastic. We keep naming. We have people on our board who've been named so far. I don't know. I'm trying to urge all of you to run for office. So I don't know whether you'll be on the Supreme Court this next go round. I'm such a fan of all of the work that you have been doing. You're such an inspiration. But I think getting beyond the next 20 plus days and into the future of what we have to look to, and equality is on the ballot. As we full know. I mean, we have a tool now that will let everybody in the country know whether the candidate that they're voting for supports women, supports equality. So we hope you'll come to us to use that to cast your votes, because we really cannot give our votes anymore to people who don't support us.
Yeah. Well, we're getting short on time here, but before we get out of here, a couple of things that I want to get to. One, for Amy and Glenda, I know that both of you are also focused on down ballot races. And we know that a number of Black women are running for Congress this year, running for other offices. Talk to us about some of those down ballot races on both sides of the ticket that are getting attention, or that have gotten your attention, that you want to just flag for folks here headed into the home stretch.
Yeah, in our event yesterday, where we did a text out the vote event I mentioned earlier, our special guest was Candace Valenzuela, who would be the first Afro-Latina to be elected into Congress, who's running in the North Dallas area in Texas. Our argument is the action this year is actually down ballot. If you look at states like Texas with the 3% gap, even narrower gap in states like Arizona and Florida, it's going to be the congressional and the state and local that are going to bring new voters in, motivate people to actually cast their ballot in this environment. So Candace Valenzuela is a perfect example of the kind of candidate who's going to appeal to, as a woman of color, as a Black woman with her multiple sets of identities, a child of immigrants, all of that really puts her in a really great position to be able to flip a seat that's been held by a white dude's Republican since 2004. And really represents a future. We also released a list of 20 women of color down ballot to watch on shethepeople.org. That includes a number of women, particularly in battleground states. We focused on those. So the states I mentioned, plus Michigan, plus Wisconsin and Georgia, that are running for state and local judge positions, county recorders, and other positions. The way we say this is, look, when we look at most women of color, most Black women's path to actually getting elected is different than the white dudes, is different than white women, in the sense that we're successful by organizing our own voters, and often inspiring people who have been dismissed as low propensity voters to actually come to the polls by really having a strong set of values and policies that directly address the new American majority, the multiracial communities that are American communities, that are standard American communities. So the complete list is on shethepeople.org, and just very, very exciting candidates on those.
Awesome. Glenda, what about you? Who's on the radar here, down ballot?
I'm here trying to
You're
open
multitasking per usual.
So, we have a record number of women running for the House this cycle. We actually increased the number of women running for House of Representatives from 2018, which was an all-time high. We've worked with the Center for American Women in Politics to actually look at the number of Black women. And so there is an increase in the number of Black women. There are currently 61 Black women that are still on the ballot for November 3rd. And that includes a major uptick of the number of Black women Republicans and the number of Black women Democrats. And so, we celebrated in 2018 what we thought was like, I mean, it was a breakthrough year. I mean, we had the largest number of Black women elected on the 50th anniversary of Shirley Chisholm being sworn into that body. And those freshman 5 Black women hit the ground running, right? And so if you're watching this and go, why Black women? Let me just paint a story. And then I'll share a little bit about the Black women running this cycle. And so in 2018, we were like, yes, to the record number of Black women. But we also sent a nurse and public health professional, Lauren Underwood, a teacher, not only a teacher, but the 2016 Teacher of the Year, and Johanna Hayes. We sent a city council member, Ayanna Presley, a state legislator, Ilhan Omar, and a mother of a son that was killed by gun violence that was racially motivated. Those 5 Black women are uniquely positioned to lead in this moment. What better voices to have at a decision-making table during a global pandemic than a nurse and a public health professional? What better person to have at a seat, a decision-making table when we're trying to figure out how to educate our young people remotely? And then as this country has bubbled up around racial injustices and the attack on Blackness, Lucy McBath, certainly her voice is a needed voice. And in 2020, we have a similar class of women ready and poised to lead day one in Washington, including Patricia Timmons Goodson out of North Carolina, who is a judge who has been seated on more than one bench in her career. And what a unique voice to be at a table as we talk about criminal justice reform. We have a veteran, a retired lieutenant in the Army running in New York, in Jackie Gordon. So these women have varied backgrounds, varied experiences, but they're going to bring their lived experiences to the decision-making table. And I think that is what's unique about Black women's leadership. And frankly, what is appealing to a cross-section and diverse group of voters, but particularly Black women voters who are excited. These women are running in districts that are majority districts, mostly white or diverse districts, which shows that our leadership transcends race and ethnicity in this country. And we have greater capacity to run, win, and lead. And we see incremental gains, but at the end of the day, Black women are still underrepresented and underserved in this country.
Yeah, I just will jump in, Erin, and say, Kamala Harris, my senator, has had in California, often California politics has been dismissed as, hey, we're on the West Coast, we're not in the Beltway. But now Kamala Harris's presence at the top of the ticket has cast more light down ballot. One of my favorite women on the ballot in California is Holly Mitchell. It's a state senator who's running for an LA County supervisor seat. Holly Mitchell is an amazing advocate for criminal justice reform and cash bail reform. And she's also wrote the Crown Act, protecting Black women and our natural hairstyles, and the way that she showed national leadership by carrying that successful legislation in California. She also was behind the newly signed legislation studying the reparations issue in California. And I think we're looking at down ballot women. I mean, she's running for a county seat that has a huge budget, bigger than some of the state budgets. She's on the head of the budget committee in California, which would by itself would be, the 10th largest country in terms of our economy. And she has been a policy leader on issues for Black women, but like you said, Glenda, for everyone. So what we're gonna see in this next cycle is this kind of leadership for women who are down ballot, but in a position to have legislation and take stands that are going to have national implications.
Absolutely, and really paying attention to what's going on off the coast, right? Or off the East Coast, I should say, especially is so important because there is a lot of good work being done there as well. Well, I mean, this has been an amazing conversation. I would say let's end it on a high note, but it's all been a high note. As far as I'm concerned, this is not the usual kind of doom and gloom conversation around this election that I find myself having these days. But I will just ask for each of the panelists, if you can just kind of quickly give your closing thoughts on the role of Black women in the 2020 cycle and what that means for our politics looking ahead. That does it for us, but thank you very much for just a very thought-provoking and engaging discussion tonight. We can start with Carol, and I'll call on whoever is going to go next. Carol, go ahead.
Well, I happily pass my turn on to Amina, our fabulous intern here. Amina, and then I'll close out at the very, very end. But go ahead, Amina, your thoughts.
Yeah, I just want to tell all my young Black women, go vote. Your voice matters. Make sure all your friends and your family vote. Let everybody know to vote. I believe that this election will be one for the books, and we are the future.
Awesome. Brittany?
I'll go next. I do want to say something about the Supreme Court hearing. I am outraged. Let me just say that. I absolutely am outraged at the fact that this Senate would move forward knowing full well what they're doing after they chose not to do that the last time. Black women in general, have to speak up. We have to make sure we know who's working on that and make sure they're not in office again. Our vote truly matters this time. This down ballot issue that Amy and Glenda talked about is so very critical in your local community, in your state, in the House, in the Senate. We have to turn this around. You turn this around by electing to make people who put people in place who represent all, who really are for equity and access. And these outrageous acts to say, we got this, forget you, really means that. They want to forget us. That's why the census is so important. We don't count in their minds unless we vote and they know that we make a difference. So I'm gonna stop at that. I'm just stunned at the audacity of people who feel like they can do this and we don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm done.
Absolutely. Well, you said it all. I mean, you definitely said it all there. Closing thoughts from anybody else?
I just want to throw in one quick closing thought. And while it is important that we go and vote, it's going to be just as important those days after the election that we are monitoring and making sure that every vote gets counted so that our time is not wasted in that realm. And so I really want to encourage people, if you have a vacation day coming, you have a moment that you can spend, make sure that you are helping to participate. We're not going to know on November 3rd or November 4th who has won this election. Please, please, please make sure that you are participating after the fact so that we can make sure that in January, we are swearing in the right person.
Yeah, definitely important message.
Well, Beverly Smith speaks for me. And I suspect a bunch of Black women, but I will leave this with you. This can't just be an election cycle on repeat where our allies are looking to Black women to save this world and save this democracy. We will do what we need to do, but we are demanding our return on our voting investment. And that is in the form of policies that directly impact Black women, our families, and our communities. And we are claiming seats at decision-making tables. We can't continue to carry water and pour more into this democracy than we get back. And so certainly, again, why I say Beverly Smith speaks for me, that is what we are looking for on November 3rd and beyond, because democracy doesn't begin on election day. So if we want to see what true investment looks like for Black women, it is fighting for the policies that not only affect your community, but also centers our unique needs. We can't be at the bottom of every economic, health, and social indicator in this country and overperform as voters. And so I think that is the Black women that have stepped off the sidelines in the spirit and the legacy of Shirley Chisholm will be leading Unbought and Unbossed in 2021 and beyond. And we hope that our allies will, be true partners in the work to ensure that we're moving this country to higher heights.
Yeah. Also a great message.
Aaron,
Wow,
that is amazing. And, you won't mind my saying I watched you all grow up, so I am proud beyond.
And so thrilled that you all joined us tonight, Erin, and our special guest. Thank you so much. We want to invite you to join us at eracoalition.org. We will have contacts for all of our guests, their organizations, so that you can follow through with them. We'll be posting on social as well, all of their great comments and contributions to discussion about Black women in this voting season. We also have, as I mentioned earlier, that Elect Equality online tool. If you go to eracoalition.org/elect equality, you will find a way to ascertain whether the person that you're about to cast a vote for actually supports you, supports women, supports Black women. And we are relaunching our expanded version of Elect Equality on October 15th. So we urge everyone to vote, but to vote equality. Our next town hall will take place on Monday, October 26th, as we explore the ERA and LGBTQI+ rights. Follow us on social media at eracoalition.org for any updates. And thank you all so much for being with us today.
Amazing. Thanks so much,
Thank you
everybody.
all.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Don't forget to
You all
vote.
Thank you.
Great to
Thanks,
see
Linda.
everybody.
fantastic. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.